we were maintaining all the equipment on the Kokoda track, and plus I was attached to the engineers, and so we were working together. And if they wanted a fitter, they'd take me up, and I was in and out all over the place. And we did 3 months up there, and then we came home back to Moresby, and then we went up on the Bulldog Wow Road. And the Bulldog Wow Road was west of Moresby, and you travel up the river about 60 miles to get to a place called Bulldog. And we were building a road from Bulldog to Wow, and the Japs were building a road from Salamoa to Wow. And the 2nd 50th Independent Company, they flew into Bulldog and walked across to Wow, and they pushed the Japs back to Salamoa, so there was no Japs in that area while we were building the road. But one little incident on the road was we used to, well, you don't carry your detonators and your gelignite together. The powder monkey, he was in charge of that, but he always used to carry the detonators himself and entrust the gelignite to other people. We get plenty of gelignite but no detonators. They were, really controlled. And anyhow, we used to go down and borrow was the word we used to use, 2 or 3 detonators, and go and blow some fish in the river to get a feed. And so anyhow, sometime later, the powder monkey came up to our mob, because there was only 16 in our unit, full strength, and we were only about 10 most of the time. And we used to go and get a feed of fish, because we were only on bully beef and biscuits all the time, or M&B. And after a while, he came to the unit one day, and he got us all there. He said, "Listen, fellas," he said, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to dob you in, because I don't mind you taking 1 or 2 detonators, but when you take the box and the whole lot," because he used to plant the detonators on the job, right, and just carry the gelignite, because it's pretty dangerous. And so we said, no, we didn't do it, no way in the world. Anyhow, to cut a long story short, a few weeks later, we were in the middle of the Kuka country, which are the pygmy New Guineans, and they were, we saw them at a distance, but not close. And anyhow, this day I was working on a bulldozer right out the end of the road, and there was only 2 of us there, and I said to me mate, I said, "Listen mate," I said, "there's somebody out there." I said, "The hair on the back of my neck is worrying me." And he said, "No, there's no one there." And he's, the kunai grass was fairly flat. So anyhow, at that stage I used to smoke and drink, because we used to get them for nothing. And so I jumped down and got a stick that was much higher than the grass, or a bit higher than the grass, and I split the end of it, and I stood up and I rolled a cigarette, and puffing the smoke out, puffing it out. I also rolled another one like this, and I put in the top of the stick. And I walked out to where I reckon my sensor said there was somebody out there, and I planted it. And it's about that high above the grass. And I'd be working away there, hammer and chisel, and all this. I was cutting an old well out of the bulldozer had busted all the A-frame and everything, split the whole thing, so I had to cut the old weld out. And anyhow, I kept my eye on it, but I never saw the cigarette go. So I'd stand up and roll another cigarette and hold it up there and take it out, put it in the thing, but I'd bring it in a bit further. And I did this constantly, and then I saw a hand go up. I jumped off the thing and ran straight to it, and here's a little pygmy, you know, the cooker, howling like this, you know. And what did I see? He had a detonator stuck in his nose. So in sign language, I said, no, no good, no good. Him, he's me. He said, me. So I said, you come in, and I was rolling cigarettes for him, see, and all these other ones came in. There was about a dozen of them, all tiny little things, you know, and they're all got detonators stuck in their nose. So I said to him, no good, you're no good. So I got them to, there was a tree with a funny mark on it, about 100 yards away, you know. And I said, you, boom. Oh, they were unbelievable with their arrows. So I had a look at their arrows, and I said, me make you a tip for the arrow, you know. And I showed him a bit of metal, you know. I said, me put that in there. Oh, and I said, you come back tomorrow, all the detonators, you know, and I make you these things. So that night I spent a lot of time digging up all the bits of steel and putting it in the lathe and mucking around and making tips for arrows. So I took them all in, and I think I had a couple of old hacksaw blades, and I sharpened them up and made knives out of them or things like that, you know. And so the next day we went in. I had about 3 tins of tobacco and papers, and they'd never seen a match. So I had a couple of packs of matches for them. And so I said, and they gave me all the detonators and the tin. So I had, that was the experience I had there. But in the process, I was telling them how no good, boom, you know, they said, yeah. And when they got the detonators, they went up to their village, right? And they was, you know, their village, and cold, you know. So a little big fire, and one bloke put his cigarette in, and he gets a little light. Another man, big light, blew the front of his face off. Oh, no. So then I got a detonator and a short fuse, and there was a big rock. And I said, you look. And I put this detonator underneath, lit the fuse, ran back, and I said, you look. Whoa, you know. Oh. Their eyes stood out like organ stops, you know, when they saw this, you know. So they were quite happy to get rid of detonators. The other incident is after we had finished the road, we had another job to do, and they dropped us off on the way back to Moresby, and it meant that we would have to walk best part of 100 miles back to Moresby. And in the process, we came across this village where the Japs had been stationed, and there was a lot of boats that had been like coastal vessels, not big ones, and they'd stove the wooden planks in the bottom and sunk them, and they were all lying around everywhere. And some of them they'd taken the engine out. They were like in a repair workshop, I suppose, and some had the gearbox off and hardly any propellers or rudders and things like that. So I said to the skipper, I said, listen, I said, I reckon I could find enough bits and pieces there to assemble one of these things, you know, and save us walking back to Moresby. What a good idea, he said. So we cannibalised everything and got one going. And so we're in a big gulf, and we were coming out, and one of the hoses burst on the vessel, and we lost all our fresh water. And we had some cans there with our drinking water in, and the skipper said, well, you better use our fresh water there. And I said, no, that's a bad thing, the skipper, you know. So unbeknown to him, I put one aside and got the bilge water and put that in its place. Anyhow, we hadn't gone far, and we saw a village in on the coast. So we headed for it to get some fresh water for drinking, and also for, he didn't know about the salt water going in the engine. So anyhow, cut a long story short, the locals were very happy to see us, and when we asked them for fresh water, they said, not good water here. We have go get our own fresh water. So I think there was 6 in the lacquer toy, and I had all the empty drums, and I was only, the only one in the lacquer toy, and we're going to get this fresh water. So when they take off, they start to go out to sea. And I said, no, Australia. Yeah, Australia. And they said, fresh water. And I'm thinking, don't tell me we're going to go to Australia to get some fresh water, you know, type of thing. And I said, no, look, go back. No, fresh water. Your boss wants fresh water, we give him fresh water. Anyhow, we got out, almost out of sight of land. And they could, like on the mountains, they could see where they were. And they pulled up, and they said, cup. I got my cup out. And they said, dipped it over the side. They said, fresh water. I said, no, salt water. You try. Bloody beautiful fresh water, you know. I said, how come fresh water? Well, it must have been the Fly River up here, and it's got a big tributary of all rivers running into it, and the current, they know where the current is, and it's fresh water. So I filled up all the cans, and that's how we got back to Moresby without walking. we were on pretty strict rations. Our ration, I suppose you know what our ration was, a tin of bully beef and a packet of biscuits per man, per day, perhaps. And you'd have 6 blokes together, right? And today it's my turn to open my tin of bully beef. So I'd open it and cut it off into very precise 6 portions, and your turn to open the biscuits. And you're as happy as Larry because there's 13 biscuits in the pack, so everyone gets 2 but you get 3. And they were just like, we used to call them fibro biscuits. They were just like a sheet of fibro. You just, almost impossible to chew. But we enjoyed them. You knew we were stricter on what we were allowed to take when we left Australia, did you? Right. Our pack consisted of half a blanket, half a towel, 2 singlets, 2 shirts, 2 shorts, half a Dixie, no knife or fork, a spoon, and that was on a pair of boots, and the other pair of boots went into storage with all the rest of our personal stuff. So you learnt to use your spoon as a knife, fork and spoon. Because we're sleeping on the ground, we had a cape for a ground sheet, like, you know, so that was our waterproof. And especially at on the Bulldog Wow Road, we'd always invite people to come in and spend the night with us and share a bit of a meal if we had one. And because when you sit down for a meal, normally the mosquitoes are just there in a blanket, and it's impossible to put your food in your mouth without getting 1 or 2 mosquitoes to go in too. They're just there right? So when we got a stranger in camp, you couldn't see him for mosquitoes, and we're sitting there with not a mosquito anyway. They love the new blood. We often invited different officers in to have a cup of tea or whatever, and because we were actually starving most of the time, I said to the skipper one time, I said, listen, there's a ship has just come in, not a ship, but a coastal steamer. And I said, I'm pretty sure they're bringing food in. I said, what do you reckon we go down and have a look, see what's in the DID, the Division Issuing Depot, where they store the food. Good idea. So my job, I could undo any lock and I could, you know, climb any windows and all these sort of things. I was a pretty agile sort of a bloke. And so we broke in this day, and all these boxes of food's there, and he's drooling over it. And I said, hey, listen, what's in those drums there? What are they? And he said, well, I wouldn't have a clue. What is it? And he got it, rolled it around. And I said, hey, that's a cake making firm in Parramatta Road in Sydney. I said, I bet they're full of cake. So we prized the lid off one. It's one of those ones you, and it's full of these cakes for the officers. So I was driving the workshop truck, right? So when we broke camp, and went somewhere new, the workshop truck was positioned in a certain position, right? And then I'd drive it back and we'd dig this big hole underneath the engine, right? Certain size, and we had a bit of a framework and a canvas top, or a top on it, and we'd put all the soil, the grass and that back on, you know, in clods. And so when we were going out to borrow things, I'd bring it back and we'd open it up. So we got these tins of these cakes, about 4 or 5 of them, I think, you know. These are 4-gallon drums or 5-gallon drums. And I know there was at least 3 or 4. And so we put them in the hole, covered them up. And boy, oh boy, the next day, all the provos around everywhere. And they come into our place and they said, "We know you blokes would be responsible for that." And we said, "What are you talking about?" You know, innocent as anything. So anyhow, we used to occasionally get a tin of cake sent up by our parents, right, or relatives. And I had one that I used to keep, and I'd get the cake out of the officer's tin and cut it up and put it in my tin. And if you had an officer or, you know, passerby, he would shout him in for morning tea or whatever, you know, and lunch. And he'd yell out, "Hey, Paddles," because my nickname was Paddles. I had big feet. And my feet were that wide when I went in the army. Never wore shoes or boots in my life. And I went through New Guinea in bare feet. They couldn't get boots to fit me. He'd say, "Hey, Paddles, have you got some of your mother's cake there? There's this officer, he'd love to have a top up." And I say, "Yeah, Skipper, I'm pretty sure I got some, I'll have a look." And of course, I'd make sure there was 4 pieces. There was one for the skipper, one for me, and 2 for the other bloke, like, you know. And I'd take the tin over and pull it out of its packing, and I said, oh, Skipper, look, there's only 4 pieces there, mate." "Oh, never mind, you've had enough of them." He said, "You know, give this bloke 2. I said, "What?" "Oh, you're joking, you know." I said, "Do you want 2? He said, "Or more." And so I'd begrudgingly give him his own cake, right? And we used to go off well like that, because I'd always have the tin full for us. We'd have a bit of a feed one day, you know,